So let's say I come from a culture where the most important thing to begin the trust in the relationship is how I acknowledge your authority, or I come from a position of authority, or I come from a culture that's really giving respect to your face. Okay. It's a different type of culture. How is the idea of being organized and being clear on purpose? How can that be explained to cultures that maybe that's not the driving beginning force of how trust is built? Because you've experienced that. Now, for you've represented purpose, shared purpose is how trust is begun. That's how the relationship is begun. That's not true in every culture, and you've had to work with that. How
Mhm.
can you help somebody from another culture understand why that's so important, not just in talking to Western donors, but also even talking to donors in their own culture?
Well, one of the things I learned early, I guess the example that popped into my mind from my own experience was back in the 80s when I first started traveling
Mhm.
and started looking at uh, recruiting proposals for my employer. I uh, I I began to understand how restricted I was by my own culture and my own cultural understanding of how I go about my work. And the first place I learned this was in Africa, in which getting down to business, I was mentored in this by some wonderful African leaders who helped me understand. And the example they gave me was two villagers are going to do business, or a man from one village is going to do business with a man from another village. And he goes and he sits. Now, everybody knows that the purpose of the visit is business. But the first visit, they don't discuss business. They just get to know each other because trust is the foremost background of business. And they visit. They may do two or three of those visits before they actually get down to business, and everybody knows that's what's going on. And then I show up, and I'm as American as they come. I'm ready to get down to business right away. We're here to talk. I want to know your financial needs. I want to see how this is going to work. Let's get right down to business.
You're
I don't
asking
have
me to
time.
present white paper. You're saying, "Where's your white paper?" Okay.
Well, yeah, give me all the background. Give me this thing in a quick thing. I've only got an hour and a half with you. Let's get busy. I mean, you don't want to talk about falling flat on your face in a culture. I was flat on my face in that culture until I understood I needed to take time in order to get to my objectives. And I needed to be much more aware of the culture that I was dealing with. And fortunately for me, because I had done fundraising, when I got into the fund giving business, I knew what it was like to be on the other side of the desk. I knew what it was like to need to make payroll and be in front of somebody that could write that check. And and uh, and you can go weak in the knees at that point. You can start wanting to do whatever you can to get their pen on paper. And I've failed in that temptation as well, and learned from it. And so when I talk about creating a clear understanding of who you are, it's because I want somebody to who engages with us to be in that clear understanding. And you have to be culturally appropriate. In and in and in the case of my early travels to Africa and then into India and the places where I was traveling, where quite often people were not used to seeing an American show up in this way, uh, they had to put as much work into figuring me out as I had to in figuring them out. And we had to sometimes meet in the middle because the nature of the beast. I mean, a tiger's a tiger is a tiger. And, and a hunk of meat is a hunk of meat is a hunk of meat. and, and essentially, there's going to be challenges whenever you come to fundraising. But that's why you want to be clear. So the purpose of the white paper here in this case is to inform your communication, whether that communication is a verbal across a lunch conversation or a cup of tea conversation, or whether it's the presentation of a formal proposal. In fact, if you put too much emphasis on the proposal, you fail to understand the primary thing is that the fundraising was already done before the proposal was presented. White papers are about you being organized and being able to explain yourself. Now, you can use them as a tool to help people understand you and get a quick read of the entire organization. It's certainly helpful with board members, staff, and volunteers. But you're going to have to shape it. When you go through acquisition, from discovery to acquisition, what you're doing is shaping the information in your white paper and that's behind, that informs the white paper. You're shaping it to the audience that you're fundraising from. And that's going to be different in virtually every case and has to be shaped. So if you're doing a generalized appeal where you're not face-to-face with the people, either something electronically or through the mail, that's a different approach than if you're face-to-face. If you're face-to-face with somebody like me from an institutional investor, it's a two-step process that Brad referred to. First, you have to get me on board so that I'll recommend to the person that's actually going to make the decision. So you're dealing in two steps. You're dealing with the gatekeeper and you're dealing with a separate decision process. Most gifts are made by the same person making the decision. And so in all those cases, everything is situational. And that's why you want a foundational document that gives you a rooted place from which you pick and choose what you need to use in that, in the art of actually acquiring the donor or nurturing them to more gifts and larger gifts, or to the fullness of their giving.
So would it be accurate to say the use of the white paper? The white paper is a great tool to help communication, need, vision, purpose, and no matter what culture you're in, alignment of purpose and expectations in communication will build trust. In some cultures, you build a relationship before you reveal your plan. And so if somebody says, once I have a relationship with you, then I'd like to look at your plan. In other cultures, you actually show the plan and they say, once I begin to see the plan aligns with my plan, then I'll invest in the relationship. It's two different approaches. Is that accurate from your, the white paper is needed in both, they just come at different stages.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound accurate to your experience?
Well, the real world we live in is not digital, it's analog, which means it's subject to a range of emotions, a range of thoughts. Virtually every experience in giving has its own unique set of proclivities. They may be familiar or look familiar, but they come out of the individual heart. That individual is calling before God to participate with their wealth, whatever that wealth is, small or large. That's why we honor the gift, no matter its size. The foundation of your work, the cornerstone of your work is Jesus. The foundation of your work is your investors. They're the ones that come and hold you accountable, but they also are there as your covering and your support.
Makes sense.
And so building those investors one block at a time, if you think about the building of a pyramid, you have the perfect cornerstone, and then all other stones are measured according to that cornerstone. But each rock that you're chiseling into place to become another stone in the foundation requires a different set of blows and strikes and approaches. And that's why the white paper is that summary of everything you're about. So that it helps you understand where to hit the hammer, where to hit the chisel, where to apply it, so that you're shaping that stone into a foundation. And that's why I say the gift isn't the amount of the gift isn't what's important. It's the gift that's the stone.